A shout echoed. Vojay Mon Raymond was being stopped by soldiers at the crowded city gate. The guard took the man's name tag, glanced at it, then looked back at his face with a somewhat hesitant gaze. Seeing Raymond caused a stir of turmoil in the guard's mind. Isn't that the founding family? The man, with his dirt-streaked face and blazing red eyes, was the noble Rasso Doiman. The guard looked him up and down. Torn, dirty clothes, a bandage still wrapped around his arm. Yet his large frame carried the air of his noble family, and an inherent handsomeness shone through no matter what he wore. Why is he dressed like that? Unable to detain him for long, the two guards finished their inspection and returned his tag. Inspection complete. You may enter. One guard glanced at Rasso, then turned to the other. Huh? You know him? He's from the Doimon founding family. The other guard looked shocked. Huh? Then why does he look like that? The two guards gossiped behind his back. A noble dressed like that? Seems the founding family isn't all that grand after all. Right? I heard the White Tower is recruiting mercenaries. Is that why he's here? No way. He can't be that poor. A noble working as a mercenary? Hearing their words, Rasso's face turned cold. He sneered and slipped into a corner. So nosy. These bastards, he thought. The place he entered was the capital, Camelot, a magnificent city with architecture that was surprisingly simple and peaceful. He walked step by step, following the crowd. Before him rose a towering structure, the Magic Tower, where all the kingdom's guards assembled and were trained. He reflected on his troubled past. Once, he too had strived diligently to enter this place. He recalled this and the calamity his family had faced, his struggle to prevent their downfall. On the battlefield, Flames and his father's enemies were everywhere. He thought of the one who had betrayed his father after his father fell in battle against the Empire. He and everyone in the castle had to evacuate immediately. We had to flee the castle. I had to enter the Magic Tower to reclaim our family's territory. Back then, he was just an innocent boy, evacuating with everyone, tears in his eyes. But his eyes followed his mother's noble figure. "Mother!" A sparkling necklace hung around the boy's neck as he cried out with desperate longing. "No, mother. That remains an impossible dream." Inside the tower were 3 chairs for the 3 most powerful figures. He stood before them. "I was expelled from the academy even before I could register for the Magic Tower." An announcement rang out, making his whole body tremble. "Rasso Doimon!" The examiner spoke in a cold voice. "You failed 3 subjects. This is unprecedented at the academy." He humiliated him terribly. "You may be good at theory, but you can't even reach the 2nd magic circle." Another person chimed in. "You won't be able to withstand the mana flow restriction. Why don't you choose a path other than being a mage?" Those words were like knives stabbing his heart. Mana flow restriction. Because he was born with a narrow and weak mana flow, he couldn't absorb much mana, nor could he effectively output it. It was the cruelest punishment a mage could receive. He sat in a corner, his mind filled with thoughts as he remembered that dark past. However, thanks to a fortunate encounter while working as a mercenary, he had actually managed to reach the 2nd magic circle. Rasso looked at his hands. "But I'm still just a 3rd-rate mage," he thought. Just then, hurried footsteps emerged from within the tower. The tower's announcer hastily called out, "Today's temporary job registration period has ended. Please return tomorrow." The people waiting outside the tower doors were indignant. "We've waited all day. What are we supposed to do?" Rasso silently listened to their complaints, knowing there was nothing to be done. They quickly dispersed. "Heard the museum is hiring temporary mages? Want to try? What are you saying?" Huddled in a corner, Rasso overheard them. "They're just looking for some 1st circle mages for cleaning duty," he thought. Outside the tower, the sunlight blazed, accompanied by despairing murmurs. Coming here only brings more shame. In that corner, his lonely figure sat watching everything. His eyes showed utter helplessness as he chuckled grimly to himself. Then Rasso reached into his pocket, as if to take something out. It was a money pouch, but inside it held only a single gleaming gold coin. "Then I'll go," he decided. The place was the Louvrium Grand Museum. The museum guide led the group. "This is the largest museum in the kingdom, and this," the guide announced, gesturing around, "is the main hall of the Louvrium Museum." The guide continued as they walked. "This week we have nobles visiting. That's why you all are here, for cleaning. This place must be spotless." Rasso stood by, silently listening to his assignment. The guide carefully assigned tasks. Please be careful with the wind force when using magic to clean. If any of you damage anything... At this, the guide's expression and eyes shifted unnervingly, and his voice dropped. Be prepared to face the consequences. Rasso glanced at the surrounding artifacts and thought, these are all replicas. Why so serious? Rasso quietly followed the guide, but then something suddenly caught his attention. He approached a room and looked up. Huh? This place looks so familiar. The room he was standing before was the Mythical Creatures exhibit. Rasso whispered its name, Mythical Creatures. He stood before the door, hesitating, not daring to enter. But just then, something in his pocket felt strange. The object his mother had given him as a child suddenly began to vibrate intensely. He quickly took it out. Why is it suddenly vibrating like this? The thing in his hand was a ring his mother had given him when he was young. He watched it vibrate in his palm. Mother's ring? Then he sensed something strange about the room. He looked up, hesitated, not daring to step inside, but his body moved uncontrollably, his feet carrying him forward on their own. He stepped into the Mythical Creatures room as if drawn by fate. The guide looked around, bewildered. Huh? We're missing someone. Rasso Doimon, he called out, searching for him in confusion. Rasso had already entered the Mythical Creatures room and was standing before a giant skeleton. The ring in his hand vibrated with increasing intensity. He sensed a strange frequency. Mother, are you trying to tell me something? Please, speak, he murmured. His eyelids closed involuntarily. In a vision, or a memory evoked by the ring, he saw himself and his mother entering this very room when he was just a boy. Back then, he was just a smiling, mischievous boy. The boy noticed something in the room. He tugged his mother's hand, pointing towards a small, very secret-looking passage. He snapped back to reality, eyes wide. Following the memory, he recalled as a child going towards a glass display case. Before his eyes was an ancient dragon's heart. This was an ancient dragon's heart, and the ring seemed to have some connection to it. He slowly raised the ring, looking from the dragon heart to the ring, which resembled a dragon's eye. Rasso slowly slipped the ring onto his finger, a sense of bewilderment washing over him. Why was Mother crying then? He wondered. He didn't understand what had happened, why his mother had brought him to this place back then. His arm dropped to his side. The ring had stopped vibrating. An ancient dragon's heart, a giant skeleton. What connection did they have? He stood silently for a moment, then let out a helpless laugh. I must be imagining things. His gaze fell to the ring on his finger. Just then, a strange phenomenon occurred. The ring suddenly shot out dazzling sparks of lightning. A voice intoned, "The heart and the eye intersect, opening another eye. You are qualified to become a new legend. I shall grant you another chance." The system appeared. Holy Dragon King's eye is checking world information. Status window and mission for the victor, Rasso Doimon, are being activated. Faint calls. Doimon. Doimon. He was bewildered. What's happening? Huh? What's this sound? It sounds so angry, but I recognize it. Whose voice is this? His eyelids fluttered open, revealing a familiar scene. In the blink of an eye, he had returned to his student days and was right in the middle of class. The professor slammed a book on his head. Rasso stood up, trembling. "Yes, sir?" The professor was furious. "I know your grades are high, but how dare you sleep in my class? You've got guts." Rasso was bewildered, not understanding what was happening, his face still a bit sleepy. Looking at the man before him, he was utterly astounded. "Professor Hubert?" He glanced at a classmate, but he passed away. That classmate turned to look at him. "What's wrong with him?" Rasso glanced around the classroom. His classmates turned to snicker at him mockingly. "What is this?" Everything became hazy as he fully woke up. Rasso brought his hands up and patted his face, not understanding what was happening. His lips trembled. Looking at the scene around him, he gradually accepted the truth. Have I returned to the past? Sunlight streamed through the classroom windows. In the classroom, he stood facing his professor. But I'm still in a daze. Have I really returned to the past? Professor Hubert stared at him in silence, then brought 2 fingers to his forehead. This isn't like you at all. However, you still must be punished. Get out. He had just woken up, not understanding what was happening, and was suddenly kicked out of the classroom. Rasso walked down a familiar path. Time travel. At this moment, he stood before a hazy image of himself. This kind of magic. Can it even be called magic? When the other eye opens, you will become the foundation for a new myth. So prove you are worthy. For the future of the new myth, I will grant you another chance. He understood, confirming they had. Suddenly, he realized the familiar ring was missing from his hand. They said this was another chance. He was standing there, bewildered, looking for the ring, when Professor Hubert opened the door and stepped out. Was it Mother who helped me? The professor turned to look at Rasso. Without a word, Rasso bowed his head to accept his fault. Sleeping in the middle of class isn't like you at all. I apologize, sir. The professor reprimanded him. It seems we need to talk privately. Come to my office during lunchtime. I understand, sir. The professor left, leaving Rasso still bowing. Then I'll be waiting for you. Watching that familiar figure, he felt how precious it was. How long has it been since I got into school trouble? But this feeling is actually nice. That figure hesitantly walked down the long corridor. Just then, an angry voice rang out. Hey, so it's you! The bully from that year came and shoved him hard in the neck. Rasso angrily turned around. What kind of damn joke is this? The bully arrogantly insulted him. Damn joke? What? His lackey beside him, without many words, wanted to attack. You seem pretty relaxed, huh? You bastard! Before that guy could attack, he was stopped. He was afraid people here would see. The professors are watching. The blonde-haired guy turned back to insult him. I definitely told you to copy my homework for me, and yet you just dozed off. Rasso looked bewildered at the familiar figure. Coma Frederick. He threatened Rasso with words and an angry glare. If you don't want to die, follow me to the restroom. Now. The three of them left, while Rasso stood there watching. Rasso smiled faintly. Right. Things like this did happen. Crazy. He discovered a system screen with his face on it. It appeared, making him bewildered. What's this? Mission. Escape bullying. Teach the 3 classroom bullies a lesson. Reward. Low-grade magic stone. Rasso curiously touched the system screen. Is this an illusion? He couldn't believe it had appeared right before his eyes. No, it's not. Coma, seeing him hesitate and not follow, urged him. Hey, what are you doing? Aren't you coming? Threatening words that made one feel contempt came from his mouth. You know, running away won't work, right? We're in the academy now. After saying that, he gave a sinister smile. But if you're scared, go ahead and try to run. Rasso looked at him, unwilling to back down. All right, then. Plans continuously formed in his mind. Forget that other mission for now. First, I'll teach them a lesson. After countless years living as a mercenary, nothing can compare to the killing intent I've felt from monsters before. The 3 of them quickly gathered in the restroom. These guys are just at a childish level. Holding his cigar, Coma provoked, So you finally decided to come in here, huh? You larva. Hearing him call him a larva, Rasso calmly replied, Yes, of course, you damned bedbug. The lackey beside him, seeing Rasso offend his boss, cursed, This guy's really lost his mind. Rasso slowly walked up to the lackey. He quickly raised his fist. Looks like you want a beating, huh? Without many words, he charged directly, but Rasso's strength was different now. His punches now are just like mosquito bites. He was punched in the stomach with immense force. The guy fell backward, saliva spraying from his mouth. Another lackey beside him, seeing this, also got angry and charged forward. You piece of trash! He had just uttered a curse when he was punched straight in the face. Coma stood pensively watching his 2 lackeys get beaten one by one. He sneered. Seriously? He directly threw away his cigar. Since you can't use magic, you learned some cheap martial arts moves, huh? Rasso stood silently listening to those words. Right, nothing more can be expected from a fallen family. Coma put 4 rings on his hand. We can't use magic in the academy. It seems you don't know we can use small artifacts. Without many words, Coma rushed forward, clenching his fist. Die, you brat! Rasso didn't give him a chance to attack and dodged to the side. That powerful blow was easily parried by him. Coma was stunned to see Rasso suddenly become so strong. Rasso directly twisted his wrist backward. Coma. Frederick screamed in pain as his wrist was broken. Then Coma collapsed to the ground. Rasso's sarcastic words followed. You've been overtaken by your own brothers in the rankings. Even your family has given up on an ignorant fool like you. If you meet a strong opponent, you slowly avoid them, but if you meet a weak one, you immediately bully them. His words became increasingly harsh. Increasingly. A scumbag trash like you dares to mention my family? Koma went from being a bully to a pathetic sight. Raso was like a demon before him. Wait! Hey! Wait! Raso punched him straight in the face, giving him no chance to explain. Listen to me! A scream echoed in the restroom. Raso left with a sharp gaze. From now on, behave yourselves, the three of you lying on the ground, if you don't want to die. He walked out of the restroom and suddenly slumped against the wall. Raso felt regret for his actions. Did I go too far? His eyes were now lifeless. My eyes are so tired. The system appeared again, making him curious. Low-grade magic stone. Consumable. The system dispensed a magic stone for him. He looked at it in his hand, very small, but very sharp. Consumable. Raso hesitated slightly. Does it want me to eat this? He sat staring at this crystal. This is edible? Don't tell me I actually have to eat it. An internal battle raged within him. Even people in the jungle don't eat rocks. He eyed the crystal with some hesitation, but in the end, he decided to pop it straight into his mouth and eat it. Just then, the system announced, "You have absorbed the lowest grade mana stone." As he chewed, he savored its taste. Perhaps this is another chance for me, just like returning to the past. After swallowing the crystal, a powerful energy erupted from his body. It burst forth instantly. Huh? Announcement. You have received mana from the mana stone. A tremendously powerful energy was causing him excruciating pain. Swallowing the crystal made his body emit incredibly strong energies. He was slowly sensing that power. Mana is overflowing. Announcement. Mana in the magic circle is increasing. His heart throbbed, and the mana was absorbed by his magic circle. After a while, he had finally absorbed it all, and it was stabilizing. Thankfully, it's stabilizing. He looked at his hands with delight. This way, absorbing crystals feels incredibly interesting. I can definitely overcome the mana flow restriction. The downfall of his family, being expelled from the academy, and becoming a third-rate mercenary mage, he could change his own destiny. He walked with a cheerful mood and a strong body. Just then, Raso went to Professor Hubert's room. May I come in? Professor Hubert was already sitting there, waiting for him. Sit down. Raso sat. The professor spoke softly. Raso. He looked at the teacups and delicious cakes on the table. You don't seem like your usual self today. Professor Hubert found him very strange in class today. Could it be? His opening words surprised Raso. Are you facing any difficulties? He sipped his tea. I heard your classmates are bullying you. Professor Hubert, from my past life, always helped me until the very end. The professor's kindness made him inwardly glad. I've always wanted to say this. Having returned from the past, he was confident in his strength. You don't need to worry, Professor. Professor Hubert couldn't believe his ears. Thank you, Professor. He coughed. As a professor, I must take care of my students. He was addressing what he perceived as a naive child before him. Just then, he handed Raso a book. Anyway, you dozed off in class, so you must be punished. Professor Hubert opened to a page. It won't be easy. Write an analytical report from page 62 to 74 of Advanced Elemental Studies. He then closed the book. This is a section even senior students struggle with. The system then appeared. Announcement. Mission. Complete the assignment given by Professor Hubert. Reward. Based on the completeness and Professor Hubert's satisfaction. Reward. Lowest grade edible mana stone. He looked at the system's reward. The assignment is also a mission? Professor Hubert, seeing him ponder for a moment, asked, What's wrong? Is it too difficult? Raso quickly replied, No, sir. Raso gladly accepted this assignment from the professor. Thank you, sir. Inside his room, bright sunlight streamed through the window. He sat tiredly on his chair. The analytical assignment Professor Hubert had given him was now almost complete. This assignment isn't difficult. In my previous life, due to my limited mana capacity, I delved into theory to compensate. Even as a mercenary, I never stopped learning. Remembering the past, he stood looking out the window, pensive. But in this life, there's something else just as important as studying. That important thing was training his mana flow. Mana flow is the pathway through which mana moves. Mana is absorbed through respiration, passes through the mana flow, and accumulates in the heart. Previously, he had been struggling against a colossal beast. It attacked him relentlessly, and Rasso did his utmost to counter its blows. From there, one can project mana to create fire magic. In other words, the stronger the mana flow, the more mana can be gathered and released, and the faster it can be done. That monster charged at him repeatedly. Realizing he couldn't withstand it any longer, he hastily deployed a shield. Suddenly, he glanced to the side to see where the monster had attacked from, with a powerful blow straight into a rock. But that rock had crumbled. My mana flow is extremely narrow and weak. He was slammed against a wall. Just then, a light emanated from behind his body, the light of mana flow. I sensed it, Suddenly, Rasso was pulled into a deep abyss. Has heaven sympathized with my unfortunate fate? Or is this just luck? He lay collapsed on the cold ground. After regaining consciousness, Rasso quickly propped himself up. His gaze shifted forward, looking into a vast open space, an ancient ruin of unknown origin. Hidden inside were 2 spellbooks. He quickly reached out his hand to take them. Abundant Flow and Mage's Body. Outside, hurried footsteps were approaching him. Abundant Flow helps train the body and amplify mana flow. Mage's Body replaces muscle tissue with a part of the mana flow. In other words, the healthier the body, the more stable the mana flow. When I had an adult body, it didn't change much, but now that my body is developing, the results will surely be clearer. This time, I will overcome the mana flow restriction. The sunset glow of the school campus. He was training with all his might. I have no strength left. After training for quite a while, he panted. So tired. I guess that's enough for today. Announcement. Mission. Magic practice of abundant flow. Run 5 kilometers. Completed 0.055. He looked at the system screen in disappointment. It was quiet all this time, and now it suddenly appears like this? Special announcement. When training abundant flow, you can do this mission once a day. Announcement. Based on the level of abundant flow, the required running distance will change. Announcement. After reaching a certain level of abundant flow, the mission will no longer appear. He flinched and pulled his hand back. Why so rushed? This made his face break out in sweat. All right, I'll run. I will run. I barely got this chance. I can't just sit still. He ran for a while. The distance covered kept increasing. His legs trembled from the long run. His entire body was now numb and shaking. He just wanted to collapse quickly. But looking at the system screen, that number still wasn't enough. Almost there. He propped himself on his knees, panting. Just a little more. He then gathered all his strength to run as fast as he could. Announcement. You have completed the assigned mission. Reward granted. He collapsed flat on the ground. I can't walk anymore. Just then, a figure was secretly watching him. How am I going to get back to the dormitory? That figure looked at him with an envious gaze. A futile effort, Rasso Doiman. Professor Hubert looked at the stack of papers on his desk and praised inwardly. I didn't expect him to be able to draw such profound conclusions with just those academic materials. But Hubert still asked Rasso again, just to be absolutely sure. Did you prepare this progress report yourself? Rasso nodded confidently. Yes, I can even swear a mana oath to guarantee it. Hubert's eyebrows furrowed. A mana oath? That attitude was too confident. Rasso's face was incredibly excited, even when making such a solemn vow. Hearing such a straightforward oath, he didn't investigate further, but picked up the report, smiled, and said, I am very satisfied with your work. The system appeared and immediately informed him, You have completed the mission. You will receive a reward consisting of a low-grade mana stone, a support gem of the same size, and some knowledge along with accompanying effects. Does this mean the deeper and broader my knowledge, the stronger I become? Rasso's red eyes turned toward his teacher with a thought. If so, then Hubert said to him, Well done, you may go. But Rasso stayed and suddenly blurted out, Professor? Professor Hubert was puzzled, listening to what he was about to say. Sir, Rasso slowly enunciated each word, his lips moving. I have a favor to ask of you. After hearing his request, Hubert was a little curious. You want to use the faculty library? May I ask why? Hubert explained to him, The student library already has enough books to meet your needs. Rasso immediately replied very calmly, I've already read all the books there, sir. The professor's fingers suddenly trembled in disbelief. All of them? Yes, sir. He leaned back and exclaimed, Unbelievable! But even if what you say is true, using the faculty library is a different matter. He clasped his hands together and adopted a serious demeanor. I'll have to see if you qualify. Rasso knew he had a chance, so he was overjoyed and accepted immediately. Yes, sir, I completely agree. And thanks to that, his system window was now filled with assignments from Professor Hubert. Rasso, under the shade of a green tree, sighed softly. I didn't expect him to give me so many assignments. Ha ha, well, he is a strict teacher. Sweat dripped from his face. Rasso wiped it away with his hand, but the deeper one's understanding of their magic theory, the stronger they become. He resolved in his heart, I must obtain the high-level knowledge in the faculty library at all costs. Rasso opened the cap of a glass bottle. Even though it's a bit troublesome, he took a sip of the water he had brought. But since the reward for completing the mission is a mana stone, I can kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Suddenly, a figure appeared beside him and called his name irritably. Rasso Doimon! Anton appeared with his cronies, their faces detestable. I heard you carry the cursed mana flow, but you look like a training fanatic, huh? My friend suffered because of you. Rasso, without a hint of fear, turned to ask them. So, did you come for revenge or something? Anton burst out laughing as if it were a joke. Me? Revenge? His face darkened, and he uttered an insult. Don't delude yourself. Who would bother taking revenge on a useless bastard like you? Rasso coldly glanced at them with his blazing red eyes. Just trampling you is enough. Anton walked past him and deliberately bumped Joe's shoulder. He gave a wicked smile and warned Joe. See you in class. His lackey followed and asked, Huh? Aren't you going to give him a beating right now? You idiot! Who's going to be our audience here? A gust of wind blew, making Joe's hair and scarf fly. He thought, class! He knew exactly what Anton was referring to, the practical magic class, where students were graded based on the results of mock combat matches. And Rasso remembered very clearly his pathetic state in the practical combat class. That was also where I was despised and bullied. Anton stood before him, surrounded by sparks of fire. He wore an incredibly smug, devilish grin. I can't believe I was foolish enough to forget those memories. But the situation is different now. Rasso was no longer worried about that. I'm ready. The system appeared and informed him of the main mission. Achieve the second magic circle. Expand your understanding of the skills you possess. Vel then studied theory very diligently. He focused on his essays. There was also physical training. Sweat poured down him, but he didn't stop. Rasso submitted a large pile of assignments to Professor Hubert. The system's reward notifications were countless. That night, Rasso stood before his desk, staring at the small stones he had placed on it. Mana stones are here. His hand reached out, wanting to grab them, but then hesitated. But Rasso worried, will my mana flow be strong enough to control all these mana stones? Joe's eyes widened in thought. Cold sweat trickled down his cheek. Then he closed his eyes to calm himself and reassure himself, I just need to believe in what I've practiced before. Rasso put a mana stone into his mouth and bit down, chewing voraciously as usual. For the first few minutes, his body showed no reaction, but then a surge of magic rose like a flame. A white light exploded and enveloped Rasso, making him stagger. Joe's eyes were entirely white. He felt the heat flowing around him. His body felt like it was burning. His legs buckled slightly, but the fire-type mana continued to surge uncontrollably. I need to create a flow quickly. He clutched his face and focused with all his might. I have to determine the flow of mana. Joe's hand touched his chest, gathering a core of power in the center of his body. He gritted his teeth, using all his strength to follow the sequence, rotate it, and create a new magic circle. Joe's heart beat within the flames. The mana circle has been formed. If I fail, my heart won't be able to take it. That magic circle was incredibly intricate and grew larger and larger. Rasso took a breath and tried to tell himself, but I've already made up my mind. He breathed in and out steadily to gather the mana flow into the core. His hand held the core to prevent the magic from being disturbed. At all costs, I must obtain it. Boom! A pillar of mana shot straight out of Joe's window into the quiet, late night. Rasso felt a completely new sensation, making him realize, I did it. The mana accumulated in his chest was flowing more steadily than his own. But at this moment, he was also exhausted and gradually fainted. In his mind, one thought kept circling. Second magic circle. Rasso collapsed onto the floor and passed out while mana still circulated around his heart. The system lit up, announcing he had completed the mission and would receive a reward. Your knowledge of the fire attribute has significantly increased. The magic power of fire magic has been enhanced accordingly. His knowledge of other attributes also appeared in the same way. After a tiring night of leveling up, the morning sunlight shone into Hubert's room. Excellent. I can't believe you completed all the assignments I gave you. Hubert sat at his desk and spoke sternly to him. All right, this is the final question. Before speaking, he carefully considered it. This question is even more basic than the previous ones. A practical question. Hubert then spoke. Among the 4 structures that make up magic, which is the most important? Joe's face showed surprise. He couldn't answer immediately. Professor Hubert looked at him impatiently. Ah, right. I'm asking my student a question I only recently found the answer to myself. He then slammed his hand on the table, intending to change it. Never mind. I'll ask a different... But Joe then spoke up, answering him. The answer is... Hubert froze after hearing Joe's answer. He exclaimed in his mind, he knows the answer? Rasso faced his professor and calmly stated the answer, an answer that was inherently very short but difficult to find. Yet, Rasso uttered it with a calm expression, his mental image. Hubert's hand on the table clenched. He adjusted his glasses and asked further, Why do you think so? Joe's eyes darkened slightly when he asked. He looked at his palm and replied, Magic is... He drew a zodiac circle in his mind. Magic helps materialize something into the real world by using mana. The world classifies this process into 4 levels. First is synchronization, where we learn the principles of natural phenomena. Next is mental image, where we visualize what we have learned in our minds and construct formulas to deploy the visual image. Finally is deployment, where magic is materialized through the formula. Comprehension, construction, and deployment can be learned through effort and practice. However, mental image is not something that can be achieved through effort alone. Breaking one's limits to reach free imagination through courage, that is what determines the level of the mental image. In Rasso's mind, he imagined holding a flame in his hand. This is a flame. Then he closed his eyes and began to control it. If I consider this flame to be an arrow, at his command, the flame instantly transformed. If it follows my will, it becomes the fire arrow, a dual element magic. The mana flow danced above his head. Instead, if I imagine something else, it will become something completely different. In Joe's shadow was the image of a withered branch. If my imagination is not limited... Suddenly, a crack appeared. The darkness shattered with the breach of a strange creature. It left flames in its wake. Then I can even create things that don't exist in this world. Unreal, fantastical things. His words silenced Hubert. That's right. A small flame appeared in Rasso's palm, like a shadow cast where the sun shines. He clenched his fist, and the flame vanished. Or hot ice. Everything originates from understanding the world. Rasso confidently looked ahead. But it ends by subverting the laws of the world. His thoughts were no longer as naive as before. Instead, they were filled with a deep and broad mastery of magic. That is the essence of magic. Hubert looked at his determined eyes, making him exclaim, This child is just as I thought. Professor Hubert smiled and said, The student library is too small a world for you. With his approval, the system also announced that he had completed the mission. Rasso was allowed into the faculty library. Bookshelves, several meters taller than him, were placed all around. Rasso observed, marveling at the sheer size of this library. Just the first floor is already this vast. Gentle sunlight shone through the glass windows. Every space here was clean and tidy, truly different from the student library. He selected some books and placed them on the table. 3-dimensional ballistic magic, advanced herbal magic. Rasso happily opened the books and read them. They're very practical. His eyes lit up. He told himself while studying the information, not neglecting to mention the basic theories of magic. Suddenly, a pair of unfamiliar high heels approached Joe, but he remained focused on his book, not noticing. The woman looked at the book he was reading and praised. "Oh, you're reading quite an interesting book." Rasso's heart leaped. His eyes widened. He hurriedly spun his chair around to look behind him, but there was no one before his eyes. "What?" The woman spoke. "Over here, kid." The woman appeared in a form-fitting dress, holding a cane and wearing a hat that matched her dress. "This person is—" She smiled at him, and Joe, astonished, uttered her name. "Snow White Daria." Joe hurriedly stood up and bowed to her. "It's an honor to meet the master of the fire tower. I am Joe Doyman." Sweat poured down his face. Rasso only dared to sneak a glance up at Daria. She is an 8-circle mage. There are few in this entire world who can compare to her. Although she is over 80 years old, she has used an enormous amount of mana to maintain her youthful appearance. The foremost magic tower of the Hongfa sect. Snow White Daria, master of fire magic. Daria replied cheerfully. "Oh, so you know me, kid?" Rasso silently wondered, but why is she here? No need to be so tense. Daria offered a lollipop and reassured Rasso. "I'm just a fellow traveler on the same path as you." Rasso, bewildered, pointed at himself when he saw the lollipop. "For me?" So they walked together in the faculty library. Rasso sucked on the lollipop while Daria asked him, "But how can a student like you get into the professor's library?" Rasso carefully answered her, "Professor Hubert allowed me in." Daria turned and looked surprised. That stubborn old man? Hearing the nickname she gave the professor, Rasso could only smile wryly, thinking Hubert must be feeling an itch in his ear. Daria continued her discussion with him. "Besides, what you're studying is quite interesting." She sensed the magic flow around Rasso's body and remarked, "Extremely pure mana, and the mana distribution is very stable too." Daria's eyes lit up due to her inspection magic. How rare. A sense of anxiety suddenly arose in Rasso's heart. Has she realized something? Daria stood beside him and reassured, "Don't worry." She still wore a very friendly smile. "I'm not here to lecture you or anything." Rasso hurriedly bowed his head to show respect. "Thank you." Daria's cane tapped the ground with a thump. Then a surge of power appeared and glowed around Rasso, surprising him. Daria had teleported away. She didn't forget to instruct him with one sentence. "Try to develop your abilities to the fullest, kid." Rasso looked up with sparkling eyes. He was stunned for a moment before he could reply, "Yes, master of fire magic." Rasso stayed in the library until evening. He carefully closed the library door, still feeling a bit excited. "I can't believe I met her here." Rasso smiled. What unexpected good fortune. Suddenly, a voice interrupted his thoughts. "Isn't that Rasso?" Behind him was the group of bullies with Anton. "Why is he coming out of the professor's library? Who does he think he is?" Anton sneered at his friend. "Well, he must have latched onto a professor, but that won't change anything." He turned his back and continued walking. "Just try your best." That provocative tone remained unchanged. "No matter what you do, it's useless." Rasso didn't argue with him, but just smiled silently to himself. The next day, during the practical magic class, all the students sat in the observation seats. The instructor talked a lot about the regulations here. The first student called would proceed to the dueling floor and choose an opponent. Professors would usually choose the weakest student so that student could pick someone of a similar level. Rasso heard snickering around him. "In my past life, I was always the first one called." The other students discussed loudly. "It'll probably be Joe again this time." Of course, he has a narrow mana channel. Some were even cruder, shouting at him, "Rasso, please pick me. I need to raise my grade this semester." "Hey, pick me. Don't pick that guy." "Silence!" The professor's shout rang out. "Now I will choose a student." First, that group of people snickered and waited for Rasso's name to be called. But they froze, dumbfounded, when the name that rang out was not his. "Anton Frederick!" Anton immediately descended the stairs amidst the bewilderment of countless students. Anton? Why is Anton going first? He walked past the professor. Both of them wore mysterious smiles. Anton whispered to him, "Thanks, Professor." That professor narrowed his eyes and replied, "Compared to the benefits from the Frederick Merchant Guild, this is nothing." Rasso looked down there and thought, "I knew it." Anton had stepped onto the dueling floor. He shifted his leg. Then Anton looked straight up to where he had been aiming from the start. "What are you still sitting there for? Get down here." The name Anton chose, of course, could be no other. Rasso crossed his arms and looked at him coldly. Rasso Doiman. Professor Hubert brewed himself a cup of tea, then sat down and said, "If you intended to come here, you should have informed me beforehand." Snow White. Daria faced the window and looked at the scenery outside. "Professor." Then Daria turned and walked inside. "It's all right." She sat down on the sofa and said, "Isn't it perfectly normal for a teacher to visit their students?" Her finger tapped the teacup rhythmically. Daria began to ask, "So you gave a kid named Rasso an access card to the professor's library?" Hubert was very surprised that she suddenly brought this up. "Yes, did he break any rules?" Daria lifted her teacup, her mood seemingly very good, and replied, "No, it's just been a long time since I've seen something so rare." Hubert misunderstood Daria's meaning, causing him to look down at his hands worriedly. "She's right. Joe's narrowed mana flow is an abnormal condition, even on this continent." Daria suddenly scolded him. "You're truly a fool." Hubert, startled, asked her, "What?" Daria told him the truth. "That child has already healed himself." "What?" Daria gently placed her teacup down to explain to him. She touched her lips and said that the boy had already completed the second magic circle. Hubert was extremely shocked and exclaimed, "Vel has achieved the second magic circle?" Returning to the training grounds of the practical class, Vel had stepped down to face Anton. Before him, the system suddenly displayed a notification. Mission: win the magic training session. Reward: low-grade mana stone and unlock spatial storage. Rasso paid close attention to the second reward. He smiled, thinking, spatial storage, a magic only the wealthiest mages can use. It's really useful for storing mana stones. Anton then began to speak with harsh words. "Hey, insect, haven't you realized what situation you're in? If you want to live," he ordered Rasso with extreme arrogance. Beg." Rasso sneered at his words. "Ha, beg?" He was not to be outdone and activated his fiery mana flow. "Me?" Anton, seeing Rasso use mana for the first time, was extremely astonished. That magic! Could it be? From the professor's observation area, the command rang out, "To your positions. I will begin the match." Anton immediately created a magic orb in his palm. He gritted his teeth in annoyance. A guy with a narrowed mana flow has achieved the second magic circle? Impossible. He unleashed his technique. Second circle. Flame barrage, causing a large flame to shoot out. Rasso, seeing the heat fly towards him, was slightly surprised, but he also immediately waved his hand, creating a shield. Joe's shield deflected the flame, causing it to fly high. Rasso frowned, looking at the brilliant light emanating from the fire magic. A professor, after seeing his reflex, clapped his hands in praise. Unbelievable. The boy eroded the shield and utilized its angle to protect himself from the heat. The professor, colluding with Anton, was feeling extremely anxious. Rasso Doimon, this kid was hiding his talent? Anton flexed his arm muscles, unleashing fire barrage. He moaned weakly, "Can you withstand this?" Suddenly, the magic Anton was emitting gradually faded, infuriating him. "Damn it, my firepower!" Rasso noticed his abnormality and immediately seized the opportunity. "This is it!" Rasso hid one of his arms to unleash his technique, also using the second magic circle, the very fire arrow he had created before. Then Rasso quickly shot his arrow. Anton, seeing the arrow fly through his layer of fire, was very surprised. "Fire arrow?" He immediately pulled back his hand and created a shield for himself. He really has the second magic circle? The fire arrow launched by Rasso possessed considerable power. It was like a pillar of fire stabbing straight into Anton's shield. Anton trembled before that overwhelming power, but his arrogant nature still didn't make him feel fear. "Damn you!" Before this surprise was over, he widened his eyes and looked ahead. Rasso now looked incredibly fearsome. He was holding another arrow in his hand. How absurd. He's already launched a second fire arrow. The arrow whizzed past and burned fiercely, heating the air. Not just one, but countless other fire arrows flew towards Anton simultaneously. The two professors wondered to each other, "Dual casting? I'm not sure." The portly professor said, "I don't think it's dual casting. Perhaps his casting speed is so fast that we mistake it for dual casting." Anton, after blocking Joe's attacks for a while, began to look down on him again. "Is that all you know? Launching fire arrows? His shield gradually turned from yellow to red. Well then, there's a way. Anton cast second circle, fire defense, creating a polygon around him, a specific fire-resistant magic shield. Rasso didn't flinch at all. Instead, he smiled with satisfaction. I've been waiting for you to use this move for a long time. Anton, on his side, was still very pleased with his defensive shield. If I counterattack when his mana runs out, victory will surely be mine. Rasso extended his hand and slowly created gentle gusts of wind, a wind seal. A vortex was gathered by him in the middle of the arena. The wind force blew incredibly strong. Anton, terrified, gaped and shouted, "What is this?" Rasso used the second magic circle, the wind arrow technique, launching it straight at Anton, making him roll his eyes and fall over. The way he identified the type of shield, its weakness, and changed his attack magic. The thin professor's eyes lit up as he watched. Is that still the Rasso I know? The deceitful professor also sweated more and more from astonishment. From behind their chairs, a familiar set of clothes stepped out to watch the match. Anton knelt on the ground, clutching his stomach, groaning like an ant. His face was contorted, his heart thumping wildly from the shock. Rasso rushed in front of Anton. He had prepared a fist and his anger to give him a beating. Anton hastily tried to utter a technique, but Joe's punch was faster. He took a full punch to the stomach and was silenced immediately. Anton struggled to spit out a mouthful of saliva, his mind seemingly dazed, unable to see anything. His arm tried to lift, to cast fire magic. Rasso continued to swing his other arm forward. This punch was like a wild beast torturing its prey, landing right on Anton's face. The other professor couldn't stand it anymore and quickly stood up. What kind of magic is that? Stop the match immediately. But another voice interjected, "This isn't magic, is it?" Hubert was watching the match very calmly. "Look closely. Look at what's protecting Rasso." That professor immediately turned his face and looked in the direction Hubert indicated. The aura surrounding Zoe's body was very strong. Is he using mana like a knight's magic shield? Professor Hubert smiled with satisfaction. I don't know where the boy learned it, but he knows how to use it. Rasso punched Anton in the head again. The blow, enhanced by the magic shield, made it incredibly powerful. "Rasso!" a voice called out. "You found a way, Rasso!" At the same time, he used all his strength. It was so tremendous that it created a golden aura around him. Then he swung his fist hard into his face. His pupils were bloodshot. Rasso stared at him, his face filled with killing intent. A second later, Koma fell straight to the ground. He lay miserably on the bricks, which had cracked from the impact of his collision with the ground. Everyone witnessing this scene was horrified, their eyes wide. The middle-aged man with glasses was also sweating profusely, thinking, how did... Someone, seeing him still standing there dumbfounded, asked what he was doing. This made him turn his shifty face to look. It turned out Professor Hubert, sitting beside him, was laughing loudly and urging him to quickly announce the winner. That person looked at Hubert's eyes, which were closed in satisfaction, and stammered, "Ah, yes." Immediately he raised his fist high and declared clearly, "The winner is..." Rasso stood with one hand in his pocket, the other wiping the corner of his mouth as his name was called. "Rasso Doimon." The middle-aged man hurriedly walked towards him. He raised his hand to cover his mouth, coughed dryly, and announced, "Well done! You can go now." Contrary to his wishes, Rasso casually said, "It's not over yet." The man asked in surprise, "What do you mean?" Rasso looked at the system panel before him and slowly spoke. "According to professional rules," he began to explain to him, "if the winner doesn't want to stop, they can call out the next opponent." The others, hearing this, were so scared they broke out in a cold sweat. He stood in the arena, powerfully raising a finger to designate, "Next is..." The system immediately announced, "Mission, win the magic duel. Reward for completion, lowest grade mana crystal, 1 Timfatu. There will be additional rewards for consecutive wins." His pupils turned bloodshot again. Rasso smirked, issuing a challenge, "Come at me." Not long after, Professor Hubert, holding a hot cup of tea in his hand, stood looking out the window, muttering, 14 consecutive wins, huh?" He looked down at the pile of papers on his desk, silently admiring him. "He's quite sharp," he pondered deeply. "Even though I've only met him once, I've already recognized Joe's mana potential." He looked at his reflection in the teacup. wondering, anyway, how did that kid manage to develop so quickly? Professor Hubert recalled Rasso's fierce battles and silently called his name, Rasso Doiman. On Joe's side, the system pinged continuously. You have completed the mission. Reward. Spatial pouch unlocked. From now on, rewards will be automatically transferred into the spatial pouch. You have received the reward. Mana Stone. Messages like these appeared continuously. Finally, there was a sentence. You bet you have received a reward? This message surprised Rasso. Feeling confused, he turned to look at it. Less than a second later, the spatial pouch opened before him. Rasso looked at the purple circle, a little surprised again. The reward is inside the spatial pouch? He slowly reached his hand into the mysterious pouch. Suddenly, he felt something strange that left him speechless. Rasso pulled out a long ancient map with a red X marked on it. Rasso hesitated. This is a map? The system quickly appeared. Announcement. Mission. Go to the location marked on the map and carry out the assigned task. When you approach the location, a light will guide your way. Reward for clearing. Unknown. Mid-grade Mana Stone. Enrollment 5. Note. Use after obtaining the third magic circle. Rasso looked at the last sentence and pondered. Use after obtaining the third magic circle? Rasso recalled the circle full of strange symbols and its red-orange color, and couldn't help but think, the third magic circle. Before regressing, I tried countless times but never reached that level. Can I do it this time? Also, he held the map, still not knowing where the destination was. Where is this place? Rasso went up the stairs, looking for a book in the library. If I can utilize the information in the professor's library... He finally took out a stack of books, carrying a glimmer of hope. Maybe I'll find some clues. Rasso excitedly opened a book to read. First is the outskirts of the Andy Kingdom. He flipped to the next page. Next is the coast of the Empire. Not finding what he wanted, his face fell. It must be mentioned in here, right? Records of overseas regions. In the library, the constant rustling of pages accompanied his voice. This book. This place, too. Even after looking through thousands of books, Rasso still had to clutch his face and groan. Oh no, there's no place that matches the location on that map. He walked out helplessly, rubbing his chin, cursing silently. Damn it! I've wasted so much time searching for the location on the map. He suddenly thought of something. For now, I'll focus on achieving the third magic circle first. At the same time, he looked up and saw people standing in 2 rows in front, whispering about him. Last time, hey, look. Rasso narrowed his eyes and looked down. I'm not hated or bullied anymore. Although there was a smile on his lips, his heart was incredibly sad. But I'm still a loner. Suddenly, someone called his name. Rasso Doiman. Hearing that, he immediately turned his head. Professor Hubert approached, placed a hand on his shoulder, leaned down and asked, Can I talk to you for a bit? He was again momentarily surprised by the professor's request. Rasso looked at him, then made an ah sound. He looked up at him and replied with a bright, enthusiastic smile. Yes, of course. Outside, it was a clear blue sky, sunshine pouring down on the lush green leaves. The professor's voice also rang out. Summer vacation is coming soon. He poured a cup of glistening hot tea and asked him tentatively, Do you have any plans? Rasso, sitting opposite him, watched him bring the teacup over and answered bluntly, Not yet, sir. Professor Hubert sat down on the sofa, crossed his legs, and began, Then, would you like to do a research project with me? He was surprised and let out a humph. The professor pointed to 2 books on the table. Based on your contribution, your name could even be listed as an author, right after mine. What do you think? Rasso leaned down, picked up the book, and read. This is... Not long after, his eyes widened. Professor Hubert, seeing his attitude, felt confused. Rasso, what are you thinking? He quickly closed the book, stammering, I'm sorry, sir. He didn't hesitate to politely refuse. Actually, I already have my own plans for this summer. Professor Hubert frowned, full of suspicion. What do you mean? You just said you didn't have... He handed a book to him. I have to go to this place. Professor Hubert looked down and slowly read, For a vacation in... He exclaimed in surprise, Mandiva! After a while, Rasso climbed onto a horse-drawn carriage. The old man also spurred the horse and left. He sat in the carriage, looking out the window. Rasso inhaled a breath of fresh air from nature. He summoned his spatial pouch. The road is quite far. I should eat something to be sure. Rasso took something bright red and put it in his mouth. This will fill my stomach. The old man outside, while driving the horse, Jesus, wiped his sweat. Phew, it's really hot. Suddenly, a red aura emanated from his carriage, making him exclaim, Strange! It turned out the aura came from Rasso. He closed his eyes, determined in his heart, before I reach Mandiva, I will obtain the third magic circle. Professor Hubert was still pensive in his room. Actually, he put his hand to his chin, thinking, the boy going to Mandiva might be a good thing. He thought of a sun-drenched beach with a bright blue cocktail placed on a table. Then, the image of a woman in a white shirt, shorts, and platinum blonde hair, sunbathing with a tray of pastries, and a cocktail beside her made him think to himself, she's probably in Mandiva already. At Endi, Mandiva Beach, a voice rang out amidst the clear blue sky and crystal clear seawater. My homeland has always been this beautiful. The person lay stretched out on a chair by the shore, looking very relaxed. A middle-aged woman with platinum blonde hair gently swirled the wine in her glass, enjoying the scenery. How long has it been since I've enjoyed such a complete vacation? She brought the cocktail near her lips, took a sniff, her tone weary. First protecting the empire, then giving lectures on magic research, and also training my students. She remembered that year. She was an authoritative woman. When she stood before the students, they had to look up in fear. Several counts echoed. 9, 6, 3. Then she held out her palm, summoning that aura. It swirled around her. In her white outfit with red accents, gloves, and a red-brimmed hat, she looked up at the spiritual energy in her hand and explained, for all mages, there are 3 numbers that carry extremely significant meaning. The students, seeing this, looked surprised. She recalled that card that overcame 1,000 dangers. The number 9 signifies the end of the magical path, a lifetime's pursuit. The second card was when fighting monsters. The number 6 signifies the perfection of the 6th magic circle, and the difficulties one must overcome to become a great mage. Next was the card of a person standing under an ancient tree. The number 3 marks the opening of the first page of the book, when a person begins to walk alone on the path of magic. She gently placed her drink down on the table. Speaking of alone, she crossed her arms in front of her chest. She wondered, I wonder if that child is living well now. The person she was thinking of was none other than a young man with blood-red eyes, Rasso Doyman. On Rasso's side, the old man stopped the carriage and called out, We've arrived, esteemed guest. Not seeing Rasso, he worried, Why hasn't he gotten out of the carriage yet? Then he stammered, calling him, esteemed guest, sir, you can get out of the carriage now. The old man then shouted in alarm, Esteemed guest! A moment later, a hand was forcefully gripping a piece of bread. Rasso, one hand holding bread, the other holding a sausage, ate voraciously. As he ate, he looked around at the pile of delicious food before him, sighing inwardly, I accidentally used too much power to stabilize the rampant mana. Rasso drank a gulp of water and remembered when he fainted. Luckily, the old coachman saved him. While supporting him, he had shouted, Esteemed guest, sir, please wake up. He took a swig of water. But well, I finally achieved it. Finished, he slammed the water cup down on the table. Rasso summoned his blazing red spiritual energy. He smirked. The third magic circle. A red circle with strange symbols gradually emerged. He was also quite surprised by his own ability. I can't believe I broke through my own limits in just a few months before returning. Rasso held 2 coins in his hand, telling himself, but just this much is not enough to be complacent. He lowered his head, determined to go even further. The system suddenly displayed a notification. Mission 1. Find the location marked on the map and receive the following tasks. When you get near the area, a light will guide your way. Rasso held the map in his hand, his head aching as he thought, Sigh, I know I have to find the marked locations on the map, but this is my first time after all. Suddenly, a shout from outside caught his attention. Pompeo Volcano Tour! With the most professional tour guides. Huge discounts, only for today. Legend has it that this majestic Pompeo volcano was originally just an ordinary mountain. It turned into a volcano because one day a special creature came to reside here. Rasso looked at the scene before him, pondering, that thing just stayed there, and it changed the nature of an entire region? He looked at the blazing red mountain, the silhouette of a monster, and then speculated, then in this world there's only one creature capable of that. The monster in his mind was a ferocious fire dragon. It's a fire dragon! At the same time, the tour guide was wearing a dragon-shaped hat and making growl sounds. The people around were extremely amused, clapping continuously, while Rasso's face darkened. All right, I can split from the group here. Just as he was about to leave, the tour guide raised his hand and announced, we're about to move on. He silently leaped down from the cliff while the tour guide was still speaking. The next location. A few seconds later, the guide became confused. Huh? We're missing someone again. Joe's feet sank into the clear blue seawater. He looked at the giant waterfall ahead, thinking, I disregarded the reward and the potential for greater strength after the mission. Rasso stood before the waterfall, holding the map in his hand. It's because of this. He smiled contentedly. Because it's related to dragons. Suddenly, a golden light flew up from the map. They continuously flew up, and then clung together instantly, forming a golden orb, then shot forward, much to Rasso's amazement. He watched that strong light skim quickly over the water's surface, wondering, could this be the guiding light? Ah! After a while, it plunged straight into the water. Rasso let out a ha! So it's in the waterfall. He quickly swung his hand behind him, summoning a bright circle. He shouted, Wind arrow! Instantly, his weapon was created from within that circle and stabbed straight into the waterfall, clearing a path for him. Rasso seized the opportunity and flew inside. As he walked through the cave, he rubbed his head. Who would have thought there'd be a cave formed from lava in here? Just like that, he strode forward, searching for what he needed, but after a short distance, he became worried. The rules say I have to wait until after achieving the third magic circle before trying. But I don't see any monsters or beasts in here at all. Rasso stepped beside a corner wall. He looked up at the rather imposing but abandoned walls and wondered, a ruin? He placed his hand on a pillar with green roots climbing up it, sensing it. I wonder how long it's existed. Suddenly, a strange noise made him perk up his ears to listen. He turned to look at the dazzling golden light in the center of a gate. On either side were two stone statues placed as guards. He then exclaimed, There it is! I kept wondering where you were. Turns out you're here. Rasso slowly approached it. His footsteps quickened. Suddenly, he sensed something very strange behind him. An unceasing worry filled his heart. Damn, have I forgotten my instincts from my mercenary days? I let my guard down. He frowned and glanced behind him. I should have realized it. If there are no monsters, beasts, or even any sounds around here, it means this territory is being suppressed by an extremely powerful creature. Instantly, a giant dragon looked straight into his face. Rasso froze. A Kodum dragon? It let out a ferocious roar and whipped its tail behind it. Its power caused a pillar to break in half. Rasso quickly flew upwards, silently calling its name. Komodo dragon. He stared at it with wide eyes. It's a monster that requires at least 2 mercenary teams to handle. Just as he landed, the dragon charged again. Rasso could only think of one plan. The only thing I can do now is run. Rasso opened his palm, summoning his azure spiritual energy. He planted one foot down, his hands enveloped in blue lightning, preparing his ultimate move. Second magic circle. Lightning arrow. The dragon crawled towards him, roaring. Rasso gritted his teeth, holding his long, sharp weapon in his hand. He used all his strength and swung it straight at it. The arrow immediately pierced the center of the dragon's forehead. The dragon stood up, roaring in pain amidst Rasso's lightning aura. He seized the opportunity and dashed away. I'll buy some time with that move. Rasso ran for his life towards the gate from before. I'll run straight to the stone gate. Suddenly 2 spears crossed each other, forming an X. A voice rang out. Prove you are worthy to enter the gate with your mana. Rasso gaped at this scene, cursing, What the hell? He glanced at the dragon that had chased him from behind with a terrifying roar. And I'm blocked by these 2 spears. He thought to himself, I can't get through. Rasso stomped his foot hard on the ground, creating a blood-red aura. If I can't avoid it. He raised his left hand, his two right fingers touching his left wrist, creating a golden spiritual energy. His pupils also turned golden, and his whole body was again enveloped in the deadly red aura. Then I just need to create my own path. From his wrist, a fire arrow gradually formed. Rasso, within the crimson aura, created the second magic circle, fire arrow. The red gem on the gate gradually absorbed his red spiritual energy. Suddenly the dragon widened its eyes, looking at the gem. It seemed to be affected by something and stopped, bowing its head. Rasso aimed the fire arrow at it, but the dragon didn't move at all. He wondered, why did it stop? The dragon suddenly stood up straight, surprising Rasso. It stomped 1 foot hard on the ground, its pupils looking down, and then its whole body collapsed, bowing before Rasso. Rasso was bewildered once more. What? The 2 spears before the door also opened. A voice rang out, "You have proven yourself." The gem on the gate shone brightly. It emitted an incredibly powerful aura in front of Rasso. After a while, he clutched his head, groaning, "Ugh, my head." Rasso then opened his eyes and looked around, only to be surprised again. The scenery had now changed. He placed his hand on a sheet of ice so clear he could see his reflection in it, and asked softly, "Ice?" He knelt on the entirely ice-covered floor, surrounded by giant stone statues, confusedly asking, "Where am I?" He glanced around. Was that teleportation magic? I was just in a cave. Suddenly, a strange noise attracted his attention. He looked up at a strange, glowing red weapon bound by several chains. Muttering, "That is," the system then also appeared. Announcement transmitted, Mission 2, defeat all ice golems in the area and overcome the Trial of Fire. Trial reward, secret reward. Secret. Mid-grade mana stone, UN 185. He was stunned and exclaimed, "Ice golems?" Rasso turned his head to look to the side. Those stone statues gradually began to move. Rasso muttered, "Those golems." They forcefully shattered the layers of ice on their bodies. The ice golems immediately stood around, surrounding the small Rasso. He was horrified. I have to take down all of them? With that thought, he immediately summoned a fire arrow in his hand. He swung his arm straight to the side. Damn it, this is a bit too harsh. The blazing red fire arrow, at his command, shot forward. It flew straight into the chest of an ice golem. He looked at the hazy dust in front of him. After that collision, calculating, to kill a golem, I have to destroy its core. The flames and ice turned to ash in an instant. But a thought appeared in his mind. The ice golem he had just hit sat up abruptly. He looked at its chest, unable to help but feel worried. I only made a crack? Rasso gritted his teeth, looking at the situation before him. How hard is the ice that created it? He raised his hand again, summoning another spiritual energy. If fire doesn't work, gusts of wind immediately swirled around his hand. Then I'll use wind. But something made him pause. What? At this moment, the ice golem had rushed towards him, raising both hands to the sky. He worried, I can't cast magic? Rasso fiercely raised his palm towards it. Lightning! Several lightning bolts came and went in an instant, making him curse. Ah! That ice golem had punched the ground, shattering the ice on the floor, sending shards flying everywhere. Luckily, he dodged to the side. Rasso retreated a few steps, his face covered in scratches after being hit by the ice shards. He thought of the system, the previous announcement. A line caught his attention. Destroy all golems in the area and overcome the trial of fire. The ice golem raised its hands again, about to pounce on him. As he dodged, he reconsidered. The trial of fire, I guess I can't use any magic other than fire. Suddenly, his foot kicked a rock. He leaned against the wall in pain. Several ice golems aggressively advanced toward him. Rasso clutched one of his shoulders, his whole body trembling uncontrollably. What a terrifying preference. He raised his hand to wipe the bloodstains from his forehead. Rasso quickly summoned the second magic circle, Fire Arrow. He frowned, his eyes becoming sharp. All right. His whole body blazed with fire before the bewildered gazes of the ice golems. He resolutely uttered, I'll do it. Scorching lava beams were shot. They were launched fiercely from the opening in the center of the golem's chest. That created a large explosion, blanketing the surroundings in thick smoke, forcing him to duck into a corner to avoid contact. The golem, seeing this, looked up with some astonishment. Suddenly, Rasso's pupils widened, his eyes as if calculating something. Abruptly, a giant lava beam shot towards the golem. Its destructive power seemed many times greater than the previous beams. This shattered the golem's massive body. His arm was still in the attack posture from before. He panted heavily, thinking, I've only dealt with 2 of them so far. Still lost in thought, at this rate, I'll run out of energy before I can defeat all of them. While he was busy thinking, the golems began to awaken again. Part of Rasso's face was covered in blood, and his whole body exuded an indescribable weariness. I need to find another way. An ice golem swung its giant fist toward him. The impact created a chaotic area, forcing Rasso to turn and flee to avoid it. As he thought of a solution, he imagined. An image appeared behind the golem, and below it was a soldier swinging a weapon. He was destroying something belonging to another soldier. To instantly shatter their solid ice, I need to concentrate my power at a single point. Suddenly, Rasso's eyes widened unnaturally. Perhaps he had thought, in the end, the answer is still density. As he acted, he thought, first, I'll run far away to cast magic. He quickly moved to another position, his speed so fast that he left no shadow. He ran behind the golems, and then Rasso's hands, placed opposite each other horizontally, began with a fire arrow. Between them was a spark shaped like a weapon. Along with the formula to amplify it, he quickly executed his thoughts. The spark from before was enlarged, continuing to upgrade. I'll add the fire lightning simulation formula to it. From the end of the previous spark, which was gradually turning crimson, more sparks of similar shape appeared. Rasso frowned slightly, and finally he extended his hand, controlling the surrounding sparks to merge them all. 5 flame-forged weapons levitated in the air. Around them, sparks swirled into a vortex. His thoughts at this moment were somewhat climactic. Compression formula. Rasso pushed the 5 of them together with both hands, his eyes white. He was currently focusing all his strength into his hands to help them all merge. Suddenly, the golem's foot stepped forward, creating a tremor on the ground. Then it swung its arm, preparing to punch Rasso. On his side, he was still struggling with those 5 weapons, shouting, Damn it! Please! Please, merge! Suddenly, bright lights emanated from something. Perhaps his hope had become a reality. The golem's legs from before seemed to have become unsteady. The other golems now looked up. A large hole appeared in the center of its chest. This caused it to start losing its arms. Pieces of the golem shattered and fell everywhere. Rasso was now firmly holding the newly merged spear in his hand. His pupils turned yellow. They shone brightly, standing out among his other features. He held the spear forward, his gaze somewhat indifferent, looking into the distance. The system displayed a notification. Your understanding of the fire element has exceeded its limits. Your understanding of the intermediate fire element has significantly increased. Rasso turned his head slightly to glance at the spear, taller than his head, in his hand, and thought, I can feel it. Its power is at least close to a 5th level magic circle. His hand gripped the spear shaft tighter. Just maintaining the spear consumes a large amount of energy. His whole body quickly shifted into a running stance. So, I'll fight first. He and the spear in his hand charged towards the golems. His face became rigid, his expression extremely serious. He flew to attack them in order. Each golem was pierced through the center of its chest by the blazing red flame of the spear. Then Rasso landed in their midst. Half of them had been defeated by him and were gradually disintegrating. The other half stood tall, their blazing red eyes fixed on him. He glanced with his burning yellow eyes at the 4 on the left. A burning orange light flashed. The spear streaked through a beautiful line of fire, cutting a golem in half. Thanks to that, 2 golems were shattered at once. He thought to himself, now it's 2. Suddenly, a blue slash swept past, forcing him to lean to the side to dodge. One of the 2 remaining golems began to attack. It shot a beam of white energy from its chest onto the floor, causing cracks to appear on the surface. With a determined face, Rasso raised the spear high, preparing his stance. If I just defeat this one. He charged forward, slashing a line from the golem's head. Its body was split vertically. Then he returned to his standing position, panting heavily, thinking, now for the last one. Suddenly, his eyes darted to one side. Perhaps he had discovered something. The last golem shot a beam of energy, attacking him. This caused him to fall into the pile of the other golem's remains. Cough. If I hadn't blocked that blow with my spear, I would have been killed instantly. He looked down at the trembling spear in his hand. It was now gradually disappearing. Now there's only a little energy left. Then he stood up, walked, holding the spear with both hands to one side of his body. His eyes had returned to their blazing red color, Rasso's face stern as he thought, if that's the case. His hand gripped the spear tightly. Holding it behind him, he prepared to charge at the golem, shouting, "This is my final blow." The golem's mouth gaped wide. Grrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrr his efforts so far seemed to be riding on this final strike. Rasso's eyes, filled with determination, shouted inwardly, "Reach it!" The golden flame of the spear quickly advanced towards the golem, piercing through. Then the spear disappeared. He could only stand and watch, hoping. The golem appeared faintly amidst white smoke and red flames. Rasso looked straight at it. A large hole had been pierced through its chest. Finally, the golem had been destroyed. He said with a weary face, "Peace." His eyes were blank, his whole face as if it were falling. I did it! His entire body lay collapsed on the chaotic floor. The system displayed a notification. You have completed the mission. You will now receive your reward. You will receive low-grade Energy Stone X12 and lowest-grade Energy Stone F13 as rewards. You will receive a reward. The trial reward is Horn of the Forgotten King. At this moment, the status bar displayed the notification. You have received a reward from above. The red, chained object writhed unceasingly. As soon as it fell, all the external chains broke. The red-wrapped object burst into large flames, a fire so big it seemed to want to incinerate everything. At this moment, the status bar displayed the notification, Horn of the Forgotten King, Fire Essence. Instantly, the horn that had just been burning emitted a dazzling light that enveloped the entire space. The young man, his face still wounded and bloodied, lay unconscious. The status bars displayed the words, "Entering the subconscious of the Forgotten King to receive the reward." After the system announcement, he slowly opened his eyes, exhausted, his face caked with blood, his expression clearly dejected and lifeless. His arms were suspended in midair by glowing golden chains. He tried to focus and see where he was. The status bar continuously displayed, "You have received the reward, Horn of the Forgotten King, Fire Essence. Entering the subconscious of the Forgotten King to receive the reward." He asked in confusion, "The Forgotten King? Isn't that the horn of a fire dragon?" His arms were tightly bound. He continued, "But is this really a reward? I feel like I'm being tortured." A sinister, threatening voice echoed, "You who endured the trial of fire and reached the subconscious of a supernatural being." He was in too much pain to speak, his face covered in sweat, his expression showing astonishment, his mind racing. Cough! Are these the remaining thoughts? I feel like my head is about to split open. At this moment, that voice echoed again. "I grant you a fragment of the king." Instantly, the red horn, emitting burning flames, advanced towards him, making him flinch. The sharp tip of the horn aimed straight at him, attacking. Being tightly bound by chains, he could do nothing but scream, expressing his bewilderment. "What?" In the next second, the horn stabbed straight into his abdomen with a powerful thrust. He was in so much pain that he opened his mouth and screamed loudly. His eyes widened as much as possible, as if nothing could be more painful than this moment. The horn continued to pierce deeper into his abdomen, deeper and deeper, even though it was burning fiercely with fire. His whole body was in agony. A burst of power erupted throughout his body. He emanated a fiery light. Even his eyes shone with an intense light. He roared in pain. But contrary to that pain, the voice echoed, "Use this power." His entire body seemed to be filled with power, exploding and emitting a dazzling light. He continued to scream in pain. The surrounding light was so bright it illuminated the entire vast space. Behind that light, there was also the image of a demonic dragon staring intently at him. Having overcome that pain, by now the sky had brightened. The sea rose and fell, fresh and invigorating. He lay sprawled on the sandy beach. When he woke up, he smelled the salt of the sea and couldn't help but feel a little surprised as he looked around. Ugh. He stood up, wiping the dirt from his face. Ugh, he wondered to himself. What? Where am I? He looked into the distance. There were buildings with sea blue roofs, very fitting for this place. He paid attention to them. Is this Mandiva? He ran a hand through his hair, somewhat speechless, asking himself, what happened there? The status bar continuously displayed lines of notifications. You have absorbed the Horn of the Forgotten King and reached the limit. The amount of mana exceeding the limit you can absorb is potential. Intermediate understanding of the fire attribute has reached its limit and will become advanced. Understanding of the fire attribute. He seriously read all the notifications. Then he clenched his fist. An incredibly huge amount of red mana enveloped him. He looked at that red color, thinking, is this my mana? I can almost see how close I am to the 4th magic circle. He heaved a sigh of relief, saying, compared to what I went through there, the reward is top-notch. Suddenly, a voice rang out, attracting his attention. Nice to see you here, Vel. A middle-aged woman with platinum blonde hair. He saw her and immediately spoke, Miss Daria Snow White. Oh. The two stood talking at a nearby drink counter. She spoke first. I sensed a sudden explosion of mana, so I came to check. As she spoke, she handed him a drink. And found you here. He smiled happily and said, thank you. I didn't think I'd meet you here, Tower Master. She assessed him with a sharp gaze. The boy nearly reached the 4th magic circle in such a short time. As she speculated, she proved each of her deductions. His mana is even purer. The boy is basically a genius. He put his drink down and asked, so what brought you to Mandiva? Tower Master. She looked towards the sea and the tall buildings, saying, not many people know, but this is my hometown. Hearing that, he was a little surprised and asked again, your hometown? She replied, yes, that's why I come back here every summer. But Raso, what brings you here? He looked at her and thought, I guess it's too early to tell her the truth. He scratched his head with an ah sound, then placed his hand on his chest and said clearly, I came here to see more of the world. Hearing that, she replied, oh, I see. But in her mind, she was considering, should I test this kid's abilities? She offered the drink towards him, saying, then, would you mind helping me with something? Hearing that, he was confused. Huh? Ugh? She snapped her fingers, and sparks of fire immediately enveloped him. His entire body was surrounded by that flame, making him a little surprised. Immediately after, a symbol appeared on his cloak. He looked at it, thinking, this is the symbol of the fire tower. She picked up her drink, continued to enjoy it, and smiled at him, saying, don't worry, it's something you can do. Next, the status bar displayed a notification. Mission, Daria Snow White's test. Help her fight against the slave trader ship with pirates at Mandiva Port and pass her test. Completion reward, mid-grade mana stone. After reading it, he was a little surprised. Pirates? On the ship at that moment, some people were discussing. She said to him, I guess you've already realized, but Andy strictly prohibits slavery. At this moment, in the prison, people were locked up. Outside, soldiers patrolled, keeping watch. That's why we don't allow slave trader ships to dock at our ports.